We're gonna upgrade my streaming PC. I know the audio is out of sync. It's because my microphone wasn't working, so this is post me. Normally it's just working perfectly, but I don't think it was plugged into the camera well enough then, I guess. The water cooler is sponsored by Corsair. It's the Corsair H150i RGB. I did actually pick it out myself though. The rest I paid for myself. Let's start off with opening the PC. I'm gonna start out with removing my graphics card. We're gonna need to be really careful with the graphics card. Let's keep this one safe. Definitely still gonna need that. Then I'm gonna remove the Elgato Camlink Pro, which I use for my cameras. Yeah, some of the audio is in sync because we used the second camera for that audio, but it's just the camera audio and not the microphone, which is really annoying. A little bit of dust on it. All of the dust. Next up is this giant ventilator, the cooling system for the CPU. This is definitely not my favorite part, getting the cooler out. We're gonna remove the ventilator first. There we go. I need to disconnect that. There we go, that's out. Now we need to go through these holes to screw the big screwdriver all the way to the bottom to get the bottom screws, because they're like all the way down here, but you need to go through the top. You do need these extra long screwdrivers for it that came with it, because otherwise you're never gonna reach it. I got the screw out. You also need to make sure that you deattach the fans from your motherboard. And there's this thermal paste still on it, so wipe it off with a piece of paper, because otherwise it's gonna get everywhere. So we're just trying to keep things clean, right? Now I'm screwing out these brackets that are holding this cooler in place, which we don't need because we're gonna add a different bracket for the water cooler. It's time to remove the RAM. What you do is you just click here, and on the other side too. Then you can just pull the RAM out. Now I'm gonna just make sure that all the cables that are attached to my motherboard are gonna be disconnected, because they're all power cables and they're gonna be connected to my new motherboard. Don't forget about the SATA cables either. Everything seems to be disconnected now. Now we're gonna unscrew the motherboard itself. There's just a lot of screws, so it's gonna take a bit. We're gonna need these screws later for the new motherboard, so I just keep them aside. Let's see if there's more screws attached. It's always attached here in the back, so it could be that if you're trying to lift it up, it doesn't lift up, but it's connected here as well, so keep that in mind. Be gentle with it. I think now it's time to actually get the new parts in. We're keeping the power supply and we're keeping all the SSDs and HDDs in here. I'm going to use Republic of Gaming Strix Z790E Gaming Wi-Fi motherboard. Again, I'll leave links to all these things underneath in the description if you're interested in buying the same parts as I did. This is not sponsored, by the way. I just bought this with my own money, just so you guys know. Not sponsored, just the water cooler is gifted. It's not a paid video, it's just gifted. And again, I could just choose it, right? So there's this thing coming with this motherboard, which is actually for Wi-Fi. I'm not going to use the Wi-Fi because I'm a LAN user. Hey, I love stable internet. So I'm just going to put that aside. And we're going to put the motherboard inside the PC. We need to make sure that it lines up though. If it doesn't line up, you can't get the screws in. You need to check it on the side, what I'm doing right here, that this is actually lining up with the motherboard. So it's in place before you start screwing it. Now we're just going to screw it tight and make sure that it's, in the case properly. It's gonna need to hold a lot of items on it. The graphic card might be kind of heavy, so make sure that you screw it tightly. If you don't screw all the screws in, it might not be attached properly. If you at any point don't know what to do when setting up a PC like this, make sure to check the guides that are with the products. We're adding an Intel processor, the Intel Core i9, the 14th generation this is. These boxes are weirder and weirder, I feel like, every time I buy a processor. But this is the processor, and we're just gonna remove this, what is it? Yeah, dummy processor, I guess. And now we're just gonna make sure that we align the processor correctly with the text like to the bottom, right? So you can read it. And we're gonna lock that in place. Now we're gonna do the RAM. These are the RAM sticks I have, which are the Corsair DDR5, the 6000 Hz ones. I'm gonna quickly read this guide from my motherboard to determine which slots I need to put them in. For me, it's this slot and this slot. Because you can't just fit them in any slot. They have an order, okay? Just make sure that you get them in the right order. It just clicks in, so you just push it and clicks in, as long as you open up the things on the sides first. Be gentle with it. I'm trying to be super gentle. You need to push kind of hard, but not too hard, okay? This is the water cooler we actually got sponsored, which is the Corsair H150i RGB. I really like this one. It has RGB colors, it works with the IQ system from Corsair, and it's super easy. It's super easy to set up. I have not worked with a water cooler before, but this one was pretty easy to set up. The only thing I've run into is that I didn't know where to fit it in my case, but that was like not on the water cooler itself, because the water cooler itself was super easy. I was super afraid at first to put some water in my case, but it was super easy. Here on the box, I'm aiming at the QR code for the manual. That's what I'm doing on my phone right now. Just so, you know, you make sure that you are following the instructions. This is the water cooler. It is kind of big because I got like a pretty big version. I got the 360mm Radiator version. We got brackets for the AMD, and we're gonna get brackets for the Intel processor. So the AMD ones, I'm just gonna put aside. We don't need those. So what you need to do is, there could be bubbles inside the radiator, so you need to make sure that the bubbles are not in the part that is attaching to your CPU. So make sure that you let the bubbles go up first. We're attaching the bracket on the back side of the motherboard right here. Make sure that it holds the water cooler. And then we make sure that we also add these little things at the start. It's basically the same if you use the air cooler, because you also need a bracket for that, but this one is just to make sure that it's tight on the motherboard and it can't fall off and it's supported at the back. So at first I thought we were gonna install it on the top here, but then I run into some problems with the motherboard because the motherboard was poking out too much and it didn't really fit. But there was a second option to put it in the front, so we decided to go for that instead, and we actually replaced the front ventilators to actually go on here. Yeah, so normally you could just screw it on the top bit like this on the panel and it would be all set up, but like I said, my motherboard is poking out a little bit too much, so that spot wasn't available for us. Hear me trying to get it in at the top, but apparently, you know, it wasn't good enough. If you slide on these things, make sure that it still slides a little bit so you can put it in position and you don't screw it all the way tight. So here I'm just trying to get it on the top, and here I'm realizing I can't get it in because of the motherboard position. it has a stick thing on it next to the CPU, which is actually stopping it from going down, which is a really weird design from the motherboard itself, if you ask me. But my case has a second spot where this radiator would actually fit. So we were trying to look how we could get the front off, because it was kind of confusing in the case, and I bought this a long while ago, so I didn't really have the manual anymore. So Nim was helping me to get the front off, because, you know, it was pretty hard to get off. And then we actually installed the radiator on the front pedal instead. I kind of needed his help. You can hold the radiator and screw, but it's kind of annoying, so I just hold the radiator and he screwed it in, so it was a lot easier to get them in instead of like having to hold it while you screw it in. So I recommend if you do that, just do it with 2 people, because it's, even if that person doesn't know anything about computers, they can hold your radiator, right? And then we attach this piece that is actually gonna cool your processor. We're attaching that to the processor. You do not need any thermal paste for this. It's already included, it's already applied on it. Make sure that you also connect the cables to the IQ link and to your motherboard from the radiators. So it's attached, it starts working. I'm gonna put in my graphics card. I had some trouble. I always have trouble putting things in. Probably because I do not have any patience. You need to be patient with these kind of things, okay guys? And when everything lines up, you need to make sure that you screw them in the side as well, so it doesn't gonna fall. If you have a really big one, you can also use one of those holders to hold your graphics cards in place, but I don't think that was needed for me. The screws would just do its job. And of course it needs power, so give it power. Make sure that you use 2 different cables to power your graphic card, if it has 2 ports for powering. Now I'm gonna install the Camlink Pro. It just goes in like the graphic card went. Just put it in the PCE slot, and then after that screw it in on the side as well. It was really hard to get it in because it's underneath the graphic card. Maybe I should have done it first because I could barely see what I was doing. You guys on the camera can better see what I was doing than what I was doing. I was trying to not sit in front of this shot, but it made it really hard to get it in. So I would have done it the other way around looking back, because then I had a little bit more space. And now we just use a screw to screw it in place, and it won't be able to move. Also got the hard disks and SSDs back in place. Now it's time to get the back plate back on. And the front plate can go back on as well. And that's it, guys. We've built a streaming PC. If you want to know more about streaming gear, check out this playlist. If you want to grow on Twitch, check out here. YouTube thinks you like that video, and subscribe back here. I'll see you there.